So a woman is driving and gets really upset with the driver in front of her. Really angry. He's just taken his sweet time and she's in a hurry and she honks on her horn and doesn't do any good. Honks even longer and harder and gives him that really loud kind of angry honk. He doesn't speed up. She rolls down her window and starts yelling at him. No, nothing works. Gives him a less than supportive hand gesture. That doesn't work either. She's just fuming. And then she looks in her rearview mirror and she sees a cop car behind her and the lights flashing. And she thinks, great, that guy's going to finally get what he deserves. The policeman's going to pull him over. But he doesn't pull the driver over. He pulls her over. And she is furious. She wonders, why in the heck have you pulled me over? Did you not see what he was doing? He has none of it. He handcuffs her. He tells her to wait in the car. He calls back into the station. And finally, he comes back out and he says, I'm going to let you go. She says, why in the world did you stop me? He said, I thought your car was stolen. You had all these bumper stickers, Jesus saves, love one another, go to church, practice kindness. I thought for sure your car was stolen. Ours is not a bumper sticker faith. It's not a bumper sticker faith. You know, the fifth principle of unity. Unity has basically 5 principles talking about what is God, a divine presence, who and what are we. We are made in that image and after that likeness, that we have the spark of the divinity within us, our second teaching. Third teaching, that life is consciousness, that our thoughts are formative, that we co-create our life experience. A fourth, the practice of affirmative prayer. And the fifth is essentially that it's not enough to know those first 4 things. We have to live our faith. We have to live our faith. What is it that our faith inspires us to do? I shared with you in my explanation of the various versions of the Easter story that of the 90 times or so that Jesus was addressed, that more than 60 of those times he was referred to as Rabboni or rabbi or teacher. And I believe more than anything else that that is what he was. And it was because of the power of his teaching that we are here today. That his teaching changed the minds and hearts of the people who attempted to follow him, who attempted to understand what it was he was saying. Why it became necessary to build layer upon layer upon layer of story and myth about him, I don't fully understand. But I absolutely agree with those who say something must have happened in and through that person we call Jesus, that people's lives were impacted, people woke up to a different way of being and started and wanted to share about that with others. So much so that that sharing still goes on today. But it worries me some, and in fact, it worries those of us in the leadership models of unity, worries us some when we talk about Christianity in our country today. The way it has been hijacked, I think, is kind of scary. And it makes it difficult, I think, for people who think as we do to say, are we Christian or not? If to be Christian is to accept this person as Lord and Savior and just worship this person, but then put bumper stickers on our car like I was sharing in the joke a moment ago, that's not what it is about. And that's not who and what we are. We attempt very sincerely, although quite imperfectly and inconsistently, to understand what it was that he taught, and can we live by that in our day-to-day lives? What does it mean to really love one another? In some relationships, it's easy, right? But how many of you have people in your life right now that it is hard for you to love? Nod your head. Raise your hand. Does anybody else besides me have somebody in your life that it's hard to love? Absolutely, absolutely. He talked about not judging by appearances. Have you mastered that one? I know I haven't mastered that one. There are so many things that he taught. Teachings of consciousness, teachings of behavior as well, that are not easy to practice. But when we do, we fundamentally grow and change. Years ago, it was popular. There were these little bracelets with the letters WWJD on them, and it stood for What Would Jesus Do? What would Jesus do? And the idea was that people wore these little bracelets to try to stop themselves, and as they maybe were going to say a harsh word or flip somebody off or do something morally wrong, that they were to kind of stop themselves and say, what would Jesus do? I think that there's a twist on that that's perhaps even deeper than what would Jesus do, and it is, what would Jesus want? What would Jesus want? And remember, I said that to me, you may disagree, but to me, the highest word to describe him was teacher. I think that's why the people who followed him, that's why Mary Magdalene called him teacher. When you think about a teacher, what's at the heart and soul of a teacher? What would they want? What would they want? When I think of a teacher wants you to learn the subject, right? Whatever the subject is, the teacher wants you to master that subject, whether it's a foreign language, whether it's history, whether it's economics, whether it's English, whether it's math, whether it's chemistry. And the teachers that are really, really good ones are passionate. They are passionate. They want you to do what? To learn. And the really, really, really good ones not only want you to learn the subject, but they hope you will go further than they did. Blessed are you if you know these things. More blessed are you if you do these things. You will do these things, and greater than these things will you do. Jesus said that. Greater than these things, greater than the things I have done. He said, you will do. A true teacher wants his or her students to surpass them. I think we have a long way to go. I know I have a way to go. A teacher, a good teacher, a healthy teacher, an emotionally mature teacher doesn't say, put me on a pedestal and worship me. A good teacher would feel acknowledged, would feel satisfaction if you got the subject, if you learn the lesson. What would Jesus want? I think that's what any enlightened being, any spiritual teacher would want, that we get the lessons, that we get the lessons. He gave us a whole series of lessons in what we have come to refer to as the Sermon on the Mount. Some of the best teachings and hardest, I think, to practice and to follow. Bible scholars suggest that it wasn't probably that he stood there and gave this whole thing in one nice talk, that it's probably a compilation of his teachings. But if I were to have to give my opinion on what I think are actually words of Jesus, and how can we know for sure? We can't. But it seems to me that the words of a teacher of consciousness would sound very much like the words in the Sermon on the Mount, which is why other spiritual teachers have spoken the same kinds of ideas. with regard to Christianity, there's a really wide gap, would you not agree, with what the church wants of us and what a teacher like Jesus would want of us. To me, the more typical church, and I don't look at Unity or Science of Mind as a typical church. I'm not even sure you can call it a church in some ways, a spiritual center, yes. But what the church seems to want is more obedience to churchianity than to these teachings. Because if the church really stood on these teachings, the church would want us to be the kind of social activists in the world today that Jesus was in his world. He cared about people who didn't have a voice. He associated with people that others wanted to marginalize or do worse to. And he told us that we were to do the same kinds of things, that we were to love, that we were to forgive, that we were to serve. Religion is man-made. Religion is man-made. Spirit, God, the divine, is not man-made. It's an essence, it's a movement, it's a presence. I don't know to whom to credit this to, because I didn't come up with these words, but I like them. That there's, what Jesus is about is not worship, but worthship. Not worship, but worth. W-O-R-T-H, worthship. He said, you are the light of the world. He didn't say, these over here are the light of the world, but watch out for those over there. They're not that. He said, you are the light of the world. Don't hide that light. Let it shine. Let it shine. For some, it takes courage to let that light shine. Because for some, the world has said the way you are born or the way you look or the way you are is somehow not okay. But that's not what he said. He said, you are the light of the world. Let that light shine. He said, greater things will you do than the things I have done. That's what a great teacher would want. Learn what it is I have learned. Master it as best you can, and then surpass me. Surpass me in love. Surpass me in forgiveness. Surpass me in service. Surpass me in humility. He said, know ye not that ye are gods. I don't know what fundamentalists do with verses like that. I don't know what they do with verses like that. Know ye not that ye are gods, that ye are gods. So it's not about worshiping. Worshiping can be fun. I've been to services where it's all about the worship music, and it can be very, very emotionally moving. But being emotionally moved in the moment is not the same thing as being deeply transformed by a teaching and a practice. Can I have an amen to that? There's a big difference. There's a really, really, really big difference in that. I don't recognize the kind of Jesus that is talked about in many of the churches today, and many of the people in those churches that I think are brainwashed, that are not allowed to challenge, that are not allowed to ask and say, wait a minute, what about these teachings in this Sermon on the Mount? Share and remind us of some of those powerful, powerful teachings. Jesus was a teacher, he was an activist, he was a mystic, he was radical. That's what got him killed. He was deeply steeped in the Torah, the religious book of the Jews. He was Jewish. Christians tend to forget that, I think. He was Jewish. He was Jewish. He understood, but he didn't always agree with everything in his own Jewish tradition and practice. This is why in a certain part of the Sermon on the Mount, he is contrasting the old. They said of old, what he's referring to is the Old Testament. He's referring to the Torah. when he's saying, they said of the old this, but I say to you that. They said, don't murder. That's a pretty easy one to kind of wrap your head around, right? Don't murder. Pretty basic. That's what they said, the Torah, the Old Testament. I say, don't even get angry. Okay, now that's a whole other thing, right? That's a whole other thing. Do you have to think back too far to the last time you were angry about something? Me neither. Was it a really big thing? A lot of times it's not a really big thing. Sometimes it is, and anger can move us to action. I'm not going black and white with these things. But Jesus is saying, they said don't murder, but I say to you, don't get angry. They said don't commit adultery. That's kind of pretty simple. He says, but I say don't look with lust. A little harder to do. They said an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I say don't resist. Turn the other cheek. And remember, I always tell you that when he talks about turning the other cheek, go ahead, turn the other cheek with me. Come on. What happens when you turn the other cheek? You see something different, right? I mean, in a nutshell, we could say that a lot of what we teach in consciousness, in metaphysics, is grounded in this idea of turning the other cheek, of looking the other way, not ignoring, but taking in another viewing point, right? And when we take in another viewing point, our vision becomes wider. We see more. We don't see just with tunnel vision. We don't see just black and white. We see shades of gray. We understand nuance. It's not worship. It's worship. It's not memorizing verses. It's not as much as I'd love for you to come to church every Sunday and for us to be together. It's not about the outer. It's about the inner. He was a teacher of consciousness. He was a teacher who taught a way of thinking, a way of being, and a way of seeing. His way of being is encapsulated in what we call the Beatitudes. Blessed are you if you do these things. Blessed are you if you be in this way. Again, very different than the teaching in the Torah, than the teaching of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not do this and that. We could use a little bit of that in the world today, maybe. But Jesus, again, as a teacher of consciousness, takes it deeper and further to say, be this, be that, be this. As we have the opportunity to live and move in the world today, we have the opportunity to model what it is that we believe spiritually in our conversations and in our actions. I think that today, more than perhaps at any other time, at least more than any other time in my lifetime now, those of us who think as we do and stand for and believe in a world of justice and kindness and fairness and based in values and basic decency, we need to stand for that, and we need to stand for that together. We need to find a way to live that and embody that in every conversation and in every action, and in particular in those that are more difficult to do. If we really believe in healing our world, it's not going to happen just sitting on our meditation mat. Am I saying don't meditate for world peace? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying it is a time for us to become morally courageous and speak with the mind and the heart of love, to speak with the mind and the heart of justice, to speak with the mind and the heart of decency, so that we can heal the places that need to be healed, that we can bring justice and fairness and peace because it seems to be that we're on a trajectory going the opposite direction now. Would some of you agree with that? If you agree with that, then our teaching and practice should make us stronger, and we ought to be more committed to living that out. Jesus was a teacher. He wanted us to master the things he taught. And he wanted us not just to master, but he wanted us to go further with it than he did. We are born into times that give us the opportunity, perhaps like no other, to do exactly that. Let us not be about worship. Let us be about what the original Christians were called. They weren't called Christians. They were called followers of the way. Followers. Namaste.